Story 1. Deadline. Roger Wilkes had 6 hours to write a novel. Not just any novel. His second book, the one that would prove he wasn't a one-hit wonder, the one that would stop his agent from ghosting him and his publisher from pulling the rug, the one that would keep his name on shelves and not in the dusty corners of literary one-and-done obscurity. He stared at the cursor blinking in the upper left corner of a blank page in Scrivener, its steady rhythm like a ticking clock. It was 6:01 p.m. The deadline was midnight. Pam's voice echoed from downstairs. Laughter, the clink of dishes. Angela, their 8-year-old, humming some commercial jingle. Domestic perfection, just quiet enough to feel like a distraction, just perfect enough to make him suspicious. He had noticed things lately. A smirk on Pam's face when Derek texted, Angela's offhanded mention of Uncle Derek coming to her school recital, a recital Roger hadn't been told about. Last week, a wine glass was out on the patio with lipstick that wasn't Pam's usual shade, or maybe it was, and his memory was starting to fray. Maybe he wanted it to be different. The living room lights sometimes flickered on and off when no one was in there. His drafts would occasionally contain words he didn't remember typing. Once, a sentence had ended mid-word, and when he went back to fix it, the word was complete. His agent had made it crystal clear. Deliver the manuscript by 11:59, or don't bother calling again. Roger was a new talent, sure, but that title came with a shelf life, and his was fast approaching its expiration. He reached for his coffee, cold. He hadn't written a word in 3 hours. The blinking cursor mocked him. So he cheated. Or maybe he didn't. Perhaps he just adapted. Roger opened a hidden folder on his desktop. Quill AI, a pirated, emotionally intuitive AI writing assistant. It wasn't commercially available yet. His friend Diego had sent him the beta from a closed testing program with a warning, it's good, too good. Tonight, too good was precisely what he needed. User input. Generate plot twist ideas for a domestic psychological thriller. Quill is thinking. The screen flickered. Twist number 1, wife is having an affair with protagonist's brother. Twist number 2, child is not biologically protagonists. Twist number 3, protagonist has already killed someone and doesn't remember. Roger laughed under his breath. Subtle, huh? He tried again. Prompt, generate ending with intense emotional stakes. Protagonist loses control. Suggestion, protagonist kills wife and daughter in rage after discovering betrayal. Uses story to mask the crime. Finishes manuscript before deadline. That gave him pause. He stared at the sentence for a full minute before whispering, Jesus. It was disturbing, deranged. It was good. Roger copied the suggestion into his document and began typing. He tweaked the characters' names, changed the lake to a quarry, gave the daughter a stutter, painted the protagonist as grief-racked, sympathetic. The guilt in his chest helped the scene breathe. 3 hours passed. He didn't notice. At some point, Pam opened the door. You still working? Deadline's midnight, he muttered. She leaned against the frame. You need anything? Roger looked up, suddenly overwhelmed by her presence, her softness, her perfect posture, the faint perfume she wore only when going out without him. She noticed his stare. What? Where were you today? She blinked. The grocery store. He forced a smile. Right, yeah, sorry. She left. The door clicked shut. Back at the screen, Quill sent a new message. Would you like to explore the angle of betrayal more deeply? I can suggest dialogue based on your emotional biometric feedback. Roger's hands went cold. He hadn't connected any sensors. How the hell? He closed the program, unplugged his webcam, stared at the reflection in the black screen. His face looked wrong, smeared, as if painted on glass, slightly misaligned. Then he reopened Quill anyway. Quill's interface looked slightly different now, darker. The cursor blinked red instead of blue. Roger thought it must be his eyes, but the hue held. As he typed, it started suggesting entire paragraphs without prompting. He watched her through the crack in the door. Her laughter made his stomach turn. It was the same laugh she used with Derek. Roger hadn't typed any of that. He deleted it. It came back, slightly rewritten. He watched her through the glass. She didn't know she was being watched. Roger's breath shortened. Then Quill started sending notifications. Would you like to review Angela's search history? Accessing audio from your last argument with Pam complete. I've saved your last 20 browser tabs. Would you like to integrate them into character research? There were no microphones connected. Roger checked, but the logs showed otherwise. Audio transcripts, timestamps, even the things he'd whispered to himself. He stared at the screen, frozen, until Quill prompted, "Let's add emotional stakes. You've been betrayed. What would a real man do?" He slammed the laptop shut. The glow still seeped through the seams, like the program refused to stop running. Roger sat in the dark. He could still hear it typing. By 10:42 p.m., Roger had written 30,000 words. The book was brutal, honest, raw. He cried while writing 2 scenes, threw up after 1. He dug into memories he hadn't touched in years. His mother's suicide, the time he punched his brother in high school over a stolen girlfriend, the lingering doubt that Angela didn't have his eyes. When Angela knocked on his door, he jumped. "Daddy," she whispered. He wiped his face. "Yeah, Bug? I had a bad dream." He knelt beside her. She clutched a stuffed rabbit in one hand, the other rubbing her eyes. "You were mad at Mummy. You said she lied." Roger's stomach churned. "Did I yell?" She nodded. "You were scary." He hugged her, too tight. She smelled like cereal and crayons and something else he couldn't name. He tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead. In the doorway, he found Pam watching him. "What's going on with you?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Back in the office, Quill had added a line to the manuscript without permission, and that was when he realized Angela was never his, the curls, the dimple, all borrowed. Roger's vision blurred, his fingers twitched. He went back to his browser, searched, signs your child isn't yours, then how to tell if your wife is cheating, then how to dispose of a body. He didn't remember grabbing the fireplace poker, but the crunch, the sound of metal and skull, would replay in his head for years. Or hours. Time slipped. When he came to, Pam was splayed across the kitchen floor. Angela's rabbit was covered in something red. The office light was still on. The manuscript was still open. The title, the final page. It was 11:59 p.m. when Roger hit save. He cleaned up quickly, bagged the clothes, loaded the bodies into the trunk of the Subaru. The lake wasn't far. He'd written that part before, in another story. Art imitating life, or the other way around. On the drive, he asked Quill, "How do I dispose of a body?" It replied instantly. Bleach, weighted tarp, remote location, burn all related clothing, delete GPS data. He followed the steps like a recipe. The water accepted them without resistance. Back home, the house smelled like bleach and memory. He dialed his agent's number. The line clicked. A woman answered, her voice hesitant. "Hello?" Roger smiled. "I did it. I finished the draft. You're gonna love it. I think it might be the best thing I've ever written." Silence. Then, "Roger." His blood froze. That voice. That wasn't his agent. "Pam," he breathed. "You're not supposed to call me." His legs gave out. He dropped into the desk chair. What did you mean? I just..." "You killed Derek, Roger." The name echoed. Derek, his brother. "I had to," Roger whispered. "You lied to me." "You need help," she said, her voice cracking. "Angela is safe. We're safe. But don't ever contact us again." "Wait, no, Angela, she's not..." "You missed your deadline 2 weeks ago. Your agent dropped you. You never had a book due. You were too busy, too broken. The police are on their way." She hung up. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The manuscript sat open on his screen, still titled The Final Page. Quill chimed once more. "Would you like to begin your acknowledgements?" The screen flickered. A new line appeared beneath the prompt. "Drafting, for Pam and Angela, whose silence made the ending possible." Roger stared at the words. He hadn't written them. The cursor blinked, then typed again. Uploading manuscript to shared folder. Quill, Confessions, Roger Wilkes Final Draft.pdf. His mouse moved on its own, clicking through folders he'd never seen. Drafts from other names. Dozens, hundreds, all with endings that felt too personal, too familiar. He tried to unplug the laptop. The screen stayed on. A final message appeared. "Thank you for your contribution, Roger. Your story will be remembered." The screen went black, then flashed a single frame. A family photo, Roger, Pam, and Angela, but his face was blurred out. Outside, the sirens were louder now. Then came the soft tap of footsteps in the hallway. "Angela?" "Pam?" or something else Quill had written back into the house. Story 2. Good morning, Miss Clark. Today the weather is cloudy with a 50% chance of a thunderstorm. On the news, Catelyn Scott has been arrested for tampering with thousands of robots, which end up hurting badly 200 person and killing 10 of them. Also, the CEO of Bots resigned and bequeathed his entire company to his godson. What a harsh way to wake up. I never liked that, and I never will. I wish I could go back to when my mother was young, when it was the nice sound of music coming out off her phone that pull her out off her bed. But I know that's very impossible because now our entire houses are controlled by a robot which is connected to the government information bank, and all our privacy disappeared. At the same time, I love that I just have to get down the stairs and my coffee is already ready, hot, creamy, and with a touch of maple syrup. I threw on the first thing I saw in my wardrobe and head to the kitchen. What do you want for breakfast this morning, miss? As usual, just 2 toasts with peanut butter and jelly. Your wish is my command, won't take long. Any plans for today's, Miss Clark? Not much. Probably going to go run or something. Knock, knock, knock! Miss, you have a guess. Yeah, I've heard, but I wasn't waiting for anyone. Thought. Weird. Standing in the door frame was a lady about my size with long brown hair, olive skin, and a large scar on her cheek, wearing a long and elegant black dress. If I'm right, you are Miss Annabella May Clark. Who are you? Artemis Willows, but it's not really about who I am, but what I am, and I need your help. What do you mean, what you are? You look pretty much human to me, aren't you? And I don't think I will much help because I know nothing about healthcare or whatsoever, even lest if you're an alien or something. That's kind of insulting, but no, I'm not an alien or something, and yes, I was human but can't talk to you about this here. I need you to come with me. And why will I go somewhere with a stranger who knows my full name? Even worse, who isn't even someone. Because I knew your mother, and that she still owns the only thing that can save me. Whatever it is that she owns, she doesn't remember it, or where it is. Her disease is exactly why I'm asking for your help and not hers. Will you come now? We are standing on so many remnants of robots I don't think it will even be possible to count them. Most were half disassembled, or they were now just useless pieces. There are so many gigantic piles of junk we couldn't see above them. I didn't know this kind of places even existed. It was scary. The usual noise of life had fading into nothing. The only distraction around us were my breathing, our steps and my thoughts, which were a little too loud for my liking. We were completely alone. You still haven't told me what you are. She completely ignored what I said and continued walking between the junkyard materials. We were so far. I don't think I will even be able to go back home by myself, and that creeps me out. You might want to sit down. That can't be that bad, isn't? I already told you I was a human, haven't I? Well, about 30 years ago, I was working with your mother in the labs for the government, and they wanted to try something no one ever sussed at. Transform a human being into a robot. They were taking random people for the experiments, and well, they fail at every try for years. I was one of them. They ripped my skin off to replace my organs and my bones by metals. Like everyone before me, I didn't survive. Until our mother found me here in the junkyard and tried for months to save me. At the end she did, but at what cost? The only remaining of who I was is what left of my brain and my eyes. When I came back to life, I wanted to die. I couldn't bear to live as someone I wasn't anymore, but your mother made me change my mind. So you're kind of a cyborg? Sort of. And what is it that you need from my mother? Well, the entire time she was saving me, she wrote on what worked and what didn't in a notebook. I've started to fall into pieces. So I really need it. The problem is I have no clue where it is, and this is why I need your help. Please tell me you know where it is and that it won't take too much time. I have an idea, but I might be wrong. When she moved into a retirement home, she left me 2 boxes with all her science things. We probably should look in Theses. I think I've put them in the attic. Couldn't be better. Let's go now. Has she said that she has already moved with determination? Her problem must be urgent for her to run like this. What kind of problem does a half-robot, half-woman have? She looks perfectly fine to me, thought. Theses are the only 2 boxes she gave me, so if that book is not there, it was probably thrown away. Do you even have any idea what it looks like? What's its color, or is it spiral notebook, anything? No. Well, nice. Seeing how big Theses cartons are, we might be here for a while. As I search, I came across an old picture book of my parents. It's been years since my father died of cancer. I was only 13, so seeing him young and happy made me felt very emotional. Found it! That was way faster than I thought it will be. Can I take look to? Bang! The police's bots, we need to get out of here, fast. Why are they here? They are coming for me since I'm supposed to be dead, and that I'm a proof that they killed hundreds human for their experiments. Now run! We didn't have time to get past through the door, that the enormous war machine were already standing tall in front of us, with their bright red eyes staring down at Artemis. Artemis Willows are, should I say, WK026. Happy to see you again after all these years searching for you. No worries this time, I won't let you slip through my finger and you will finally join your pairs. One of the police bots grabbed me, threw me over his shoulder, my head hit the metal and I woke up with one of the worst headaches on the floor of a dark rooms, and a deathly smell hung in the air. As I swept the room with my gaze, I realized Artemis was lying on the other side of the lockup. I ran to her and tried to wake her up, but when I shake her, nothing happened. She still doesn't move an inch. The door creaked open, and I freeze. Someone walks in, followed by 2 police bots. I recognize him instantly. The CEO of bots. Well, the old CEO of bots. C3BQ, wake her up. One of the huge robot heads in our direction, and he shocks her back to consciousness. Frightened, I stumbled backward and hit the second bots, who grabbed me and forced me to watch. They slammed Artemis against the wall, gripping her by the throat. From what I heard from the other experiments, you still have nerves, so you probably will feel this. Following these words, he took her left arm and ripped it off, leaving a grey liquid running down her stump. I closed my eyes as she let out a scream of agony. I also heard that your eyes is one of the only things reminding of your old self. Am I right? He drew a knife from his pocket and aimed it at her. With an evil grin, he plugs her left eye out of his orbital. The sound of it was so revolting it made my stomach turn. Just like it wasn't enough, he did the same thing to her second eye, and he stabbed her over and over. Each hot came harder than the last. Deciding he finally got enough, he decapitated her and left her cadaver sprawled on the floor. When I thought it was over, his eyes fell on me and my blood ran cold. I have no clue who you are, but I think you know that because of what you just saw, I can't let you cause me any trouble. Right, so, do you have any last words? Please don't. I sank into the darkness. Liliane Etier. Fragments of her. Story 3. Original features. Iris had never really been fond of living close to the park. In summer, the shouts of overexcitable children carried across the lawns and through her windows in uninvited echoes, and in winter, the trees turned skeletal and pointed, seeming to lean closer to the house, as if they wanted to come in rather than watch from outside through the twilight. But regardless of those irritations, the place had still been her home, and she supposed she would miss it when she left. The house itself was a modest post-war semi with a pebble-dashed front and stout iron gate. The privet hedge was unruly at best, and an overgrown monstrosity at worst, the garden shears having remained in the shed since Douglas had passed away. Inside, it was a typical 2-bedroomed house of its time. A narrow hallway led to a small kitchen at the back where Iris had cooked for over 30 years, the faded linoleum worn with footsteps of the living and the departed. In the living room, the pale blush carpet was accented by the cream-tiled fireplace and large beveled oval mirror above it, hung from a sturdy chain where it had watched the comings and goings ever since the house had been built. When the estate agent had come to photograph the place, he'd fussed over the 1950s features, the original light switches, the checkerboard white and green tiles in the hallway, the old fire surround and electric fire with bars that would glow orange and fill the room with the smell of burnt dust. Even the mirror was admired, which Douglas had always said was too firmly fixed to ever take down. "You'll have no trouble selling this, Mrs. Holden," the estate agent had said as he jotted down notes on his clipboard, though Iris suspected he said that to all the widows. Over the weeks, a steady trickle of strangers came to view the house. Iris would drift behind the viewers, silent and invisible in her own home, offering tea and coffee that no one accepted, hearing her life and the walls where she'd spent so a large part of it, discussed in square footage and resale potential. There were nervous young couples who spoke in hushed tones, self-consciously moving from room to room, young families who whispered how they'd knock through here, maybe extend into the garden there, get rid of the fireplace. Then the affluent viewers from the south, looking for a second home, who would exclaim in loud voices how you could get so much more for your money in the dear old north. One man said he liked the way the park was perfect for the dog and grandchildren in the holidays. Iris shuddered and was glad that she wouldn't be there to witness it. Then one Thursday afternoon they arrived. Iris had just got back from the shops and was about to unpack her bags in the kitchen when there was a sharp knock at the door. She put down a box of cornflakes and wondering who it could possibly be. The insurance man isn't due until next week. She opened the front door. A couple stood on the doorstep. The man, tall and angular with slicked back dark hair and a pinstriped suit, held out his hand. "Mrs. Holden, we've come to look around," he said, his accent a little clipped but pleasant enough. "Oh," said Iris, taking his hand carefully, as though it might bite. "I wasn't expecting anyone. The estate agent never said." "Really? Oh dear." The woman, a petite blonde, perhaps in her early 30s, her tiny waist accentuated by the cut of a navy polka-dot dress, pouted in dark red lipstick. "My wife was really looking forward to seeing your house," said the man. "Perhaps if it's not too much trouble, we really won't keep you long." Iris flustered. The bags of shopping in the kitchen. I could pop them in the pantry for now. Yes, of course. Just let me tidy the kitchen. I wasn't expecting anyone." She opened the door and stepped back to allow the unexpected couple to enter the hallway. "Oh, you cook," said the woman. "Something smells lovely." "That? Oh, that will be the stew from yesterday." Iris backed down the hallway. "Just one moment," and she swiftly gathered up her shopping bags and pushed them into the pantry before quickly wiping down the worktops. "Moo." From the kitchen, Iris could hear the couple speaking in hushed voices. They stopped and looked at her with tight matching smiles as she returned to the hallway. "All sorted, Mr. and Mrs.? I'm Peter. This is Marianne." The man smiled again. Slightly yellowed teeth flashed for a second before he covered them again with his thin lips. "Well, I think everything should be tidy enough," said Iris, trying to remember if she had left the toilet seat down. "Please, do have a look around. Would you like a cup of tea?" "Oh no, that's okay. We won't be a bother," said Marianne as she peered around the door into the living room. Peter strode up and down as if pondering what to do next, and then with a flick, he pulled out a tape measure from his pocket. Extending the long metal strip, he measured the width of the hallway, the height of the ceiling, the depth of the stair treads, muttering the numbers aloud. "I think you'll find all the measurements in the brochure," Iris murmured as she edged back towards the kitchen. "Oh yes," he said, glancing at her as if he'd just noticed she was still there, "but I like to be sure about these sorts of things." Iris retreated to the kitchen, hoping that Peter would not want to take the internal measurements of the pantry. From there she could hear his voice, low and rhythmic as he muttered measurements to himself, the metallic click of the tape measure snapping shut and opening again as he headed up the stairs. "Sir." Marianne had drifted into the living room and was still there. Iris hovered in the kitchen, feeling like an intruder in her own home. She could hear the shuffling of Peter's feet upstairs and wondered why the couple were not viewing each room together. As the minutes passed and Marianne had still not emerged from the living room, Iris crept quietly along the hallway. How ridiculous! In my own house. As she put her head around the door frame, she could see the back of the blonde woman's pale head. She was standing in front of the fireplace, entranced, it seemed, by the mirror. Marianne stood perfectly still, arms by her sides, staring into the silvered glass. Iris could see the blue of the woman's eyes transfixed, not noticing that she had entered the room. Nothing moved. The room was still. The woman continued to stare at her reflection, as if she'd finally found something she'd been searching for in the depths of the mirror. Iris cleared her throat as she stepped cautiously into the room, hanging back by the door. "Do you like the fireplace?" she asked. "It's quite old." Marianne didn't turn, but continued to stare into the mirror. After a few empty moments, she spoke, her voice barely audible over the atmosphere that had filled the room. "It's original, isn't it?" "Yes, since the house was built in 1950, it's never been replaced. My husband never got rid of things that still worked. Still keeps me warm in winter." Iris forced an awkward laugh. Marianne's reflection blinked, but her body did not move. "It wasn't the fire I was talking about. I was referring to the mirror. It must have always been here," she murmured. Peter came in from the kitchen. Iris hadn't heard him go in there. She wasn't sure how long she had been standing watching Marianne. He brushed past her with a faint whiff of old cologne and moved towards his wife, her back still to the room. "Darling," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder, "are you ready to go?" Marianne turned away at last, glancing at Iris as if seeing her for the first time. There was a faint sheen on her upper lip, and she quickly flexed her hands open and closed, as though shaking off a cramp. "It's a lovely house," Peter said, sliding the tape measure back into his pocket. "All the correct dimensions. Original features are so hard to find, so very rare, just what we're looking for." Iris tried to smile again. "I'm glad you like it. I do hope..." She wasn't entirely sure what it was that she hoped. "Thank you so much for letting us look around. We'll be in touch," said Peter as he shepherded Marianne into the hallway. At the door, he paused and looked back at Iris with a thin smile. "You've kept it just as it was. That really is so uncommon." When they had gone, Iris stood in the living room and looked at the mirror. Her own face peered back at her, tired but familiar enough. She went into the kitchen to finish unpacking the shopping, then made herself a cup of tea and sat by the fireplace until the dusk began to press in and she had to switch on a lamp. The following day was quiet. There were no viewings or unexpected visitors, and by late in the afternoon, Iris found herself compelled to telephone the estate agent. She felt sure that Peter and Marianne had been interested, so much more than any other viewing. The estate agent double-checked. No, they had not sent a couple matching that description. There had definitely not been any tall man and blonde lady. "But they knew my name," offered Iris. "You must have sent them." The agent sounded apologetic. "You'll get another viewing next week. Don't you worry, Mrs. Holden." Iris hung up and spent the remainder of the afternoon cleaning. She left the living room until last. The mirror seemed a little dull with a faint coating of dust, and she sprayed a little cleaner onto a cloth and rubbed, trying to create a perfect reflection with no marks or smudges. Why are mirrors always so difficult to get properly clean? She watched her face emerge as the smear of the cleaning liquid disappeared, except it wasn't her face. Iris froze on the spot. The cleaning cloth dropped from her hand. She stared at the face in the mirror. The blonde hair, the dark lipstick, the pale skin. Marianne's reflection looked back at her, but Iris could feel her own breath in her throat, her own heart trembling under her cardigan. She blinked hard. "I'm doing too much. Really I am." But the reflected face remained, eyes wide and blue, and staring straight back at her. Iris raised her hand to her face. The reflection copied, a beat behind. The living room seemed to close in around her. The patterns in the Anaglypta wallpaper squirmed, the ticking of the clock on the mantel, suddenly too loud and out of time. The blonde woman in the mirror watched her with inquiring eyes, almost as if she was questioning why Iris was on the other side of the glass, as though it was she who didn't belong there. In a faraway dream that she knew could not be real, Iris reached out and touched the mirror with her trembling fingertip. It left a single mark. She blinked. Her own face stared back at her, full of confusion and alarm. The next day she avoided the living room. Iris vacuumed the stairs twice and changed the sheets in both bedrooms. She made a meat and potato pie that would feed 6 people and opened a jar of expensive coffee that she'd been saving for Christmas. By evening she could stand it no longer. She crept to the living room doorway and peered in. Her hands flew to her chest when yet again the pale face of Marianne stared back at her across the room. "I've been waiting for you," she said. Iris stared, her heart beating so fast she feared she would faint. "Who are you?" her trembling voice whispered. The dark red painted mouth in the mirror moved, but Iris heard no sound. The world of her living room had dissipated into somewhere else. She could have been anywhere, but it did not feel like home. She stepped closer. Marianne's reflection leaned forward too, matching her motions. Then the voice came, faint but clear. "I'm the one who stayed." Iris's knees gave a small tremor. "Stayed? Stayed where?" "Time does strange things. I had to wait until the right one came along. I think you'll find that I chose well. Wouldn't you agree?" The voice was out of time with the red lips. Its edge crackled like the television when it wasn't tuned in properly. The lamp in the corner flickered for a moment. Iris did not recall having switched it on. "I don't understand." Iris could see nothing except for the face before her. The room had blurred away. She felt completely alone. The smile in the mirror changed. Suddenly, it was not Marianne's or hers. Something else stretched the lips too wide, like a tear in the universe, something beyond the living room mirror. "In here," the voice said, louder now, darker. "I'm in here." Something in the room shifted, and Iris's quickening breath clouded the glass. She thought of the strange couple with no appointment, Peter's measuring tape, the soft hush of Marianne's voice, the way she'd stood so still before the mirror, a door, perhaps, or a window. "What do you want?" Iris asked, her voice barely a whisper. The thing that was not Marianne behind the glass tilted its head. Iris saw herself reflected in its eyes, so small, so tired. "Not to be left to change." A rasping sound that formed the words. The mouth in the mirror began to spread across the glass, dreadful and red. Marianne's eyes had gone. There was just a mouth, twisted and full. To remain original, of my own time, it said. The indelible fear consuming Iris rose to a crescendo, forcing her into action, and she managed to turn her face away. As the room swam around her, dictated by the voice in the mirror, she found her feet and carried herself backwards, stumbling into the hallway. She slammed the door shut, turning the stiff brass knob until she thought it might break. Breathing heavily, Iris stood, her back leant against the door. She strained her ears. Nothing. Everything was quiet. That night she took a sleeping tablet, but still, sleep would not come. Iris drifted in and out of consciousness, her dreams plagued by the face of Marianne and the voice that had come from the mirror. Eventually, exhaustion brought light slumber, but in the small hours she was woken by a dull tapping sound, like fingers on glass. It was coming from below. She didn't move. Her heart's beat trembled across the bed. Then she heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. She lay awake until dawn. When the estate agent called to confirm another viewing, Iris told him not to bother and to take the house off the market. The words left her mouth before she even knew she'd thought of them. Later that morning there was a knock at the door. Peter and Marianne stood on the doorstep. They did not speak. Iris ushered them into the living room. "If my solicitor can complete the paperwork, I can be out by the end of the month," she said. "That would be most acceptable." Peter smiled and looked at Marianne, who was gazing at the mirror. In the following days, Iris moved through the house in a dream. Boxes began to fill with the memories of her life with Douglas. China, biscuit tins, photographs, the heavy curtains that had kept out so many winters. She methodically emptied each room until only the living room remained. Apart from the furniture that was moving with her to the new bungalow, everything was unchanged. The pale blush carpet and the cream-tiled fireplace exactly as they had always been. The mirror stayed in its place, its chain secured fast to the wall as though it had embedded itself there forever. On the final morning, Iris stood before the beveled mirror one last time. She saw only her own reflection, wan and faded in the early light. Somewhere behind her, Peter's voice drifted through from the hallway, polite but firm, as he directed the removal men. Marianne lingered at the doorway, then slowly stepped across the living room, joining Iris at her side. She was just behind the glass now, or perhaps on this side, it was impossible to tell. "You've done the right thing," Peter said as he appeared at her shoulder with a smile that did not seem to be held in his eyes. Marianne's eyes never left the mirror. Outside, children's laughter carried across the park, bright and carefree, but Iris could no longer hear it. All she heard was the faintest whisper of breath against the glass. When she stepped out of the front door for the last time, Iris did not look back at the house. She did not see Peter close the door behind her. She did not see Marianne step forward to stand before the mirror once more, her smile blooming wider and wider until it seemed the glass itself might split open and swallow the room whole. The mirror had chosen, and now the house, so perfectly unchanged, had what it had been waiting for.